My name's Thomas Anderson. I work for a company called Econosis, studying various things, sound and color and acoustics, and how they relate to full body consciousness in the context of creating healthy and nurturing work environments. And also do research for a company called, or a nonprofit research group called ICRL, International Consciousness Research Laboratories. Anyway, today I'm going to tell you a little bit or share with you regarding the science and art in sound and healing. I spent my entire life studying sound. I played drums since I was a little kid and played music with my family and started singing, and everybody in my family played music. So I've been studying music my whole life and became a professional drummer. And then in school I studied physics. And physics, you start to learn that really everything boils down to vibrations, no matter what you're studying, whether it's quantum mechanics or acoustics or any kind of engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering. Science, a lot of science boils down to vibration, and acoustics and vibration, all the same thing. So I was mentioning this to another Congress participant, and right as the elevator door was closing, she said, "The only thing that's important is love." And then the door closed, and I stood there, and it hit me right where I know stuff. And so I realized, rather than try to lead up to some sort of conclusion about sound and healing, rather than try to present some particular piece of information, I'd like to share with you a variety of approaches of looking at sound and perceiving sound and thinking about how sound works, seeing how sound is used in healing, and through just seeing different varieties of the unlimited things you can learn about sound, start to get an appreciation for how sound is always in your life. Everywhere you go, you're speaking, you hear all the noises. There's sounds moving through all the materials. There's super low frequency sounds moving through your body. There's sounds being radiated by black holes causing galaxy formation patterns. There's just sound everywhere, and you start to see sound in structures and sound everywhere you look. I'm going to switch over to talking more about sound healing. I think that's about as much physics as we're going to do. All right. Well, I studied a lot of different types of healing, Qigong. I've never studied any type of healing enough. Studied for a long time Qigong, and studied a Korean form that's like Qigong called Dan Hak. And then studied with yoga teachers and with Tibetan lamas, and as many people as I could meet and that would let me spend time with them and would teach me. And then I've been playing music my whole life, and those things just started to bleed over together. It was hard to avoid. So just a little bit about sound healing. Just the basic concepts. Everybody probably already knows all of this. That the universe is an interconnected web of interacting vibrations. That's pretty common teaching from the spiritual traditions of most cultures that I'm familiar with. Maybe that's a more modern phrasing of it, but people around the world have been pretty much saying that for a long time. As a part of the universe, your body is the same thing. It's an interconnected web of vibrations and rhythmic patterns. You got your heartbeat to your breath. To your brain going, to all the different vibrations and patterns going on in your molecules to your electrons. You got all these different dances going on, and they're all connected to each other, and they're all pulling on each other. It's like a gazillion dancers all pulling on each other. And if you imagine you had 10,000 people all trying to do this dance together, and they're all have to hold hands, and they're all holding hands in this big web, all trying to do this dance together. If they got in the groove right, the whole thing would really work together. But if one person really messed up pretty bad, imagine how much that would affect everyone else. Because somebody fell down, it would pull everybody else that was next to them sort of over, and they wouldn't dance right, and that would mess the person next to them up. So if you think of your body like that, if you think of it in terms of vibrations, of dances, of movements like that, all connected to each other, it gives a different way of looking at illness. I mean, you can look at it as somebody's out of step, somebody's not dancing groove. And health is associated with harmony, which is really everybody dancing well together, right? Your breath working well with your heart rate, with your brain waves, with all your glandular activities, to your blood pumping, to you all already know all that. And that health is restored through reharmonization of these. And so there's a lot of different theories among people interested in sound healing as to how to go about that. I narrowed the types of sound healing down into 3 categories, but I just made that up just to make it easier to talk about. But there's the healer and patient. Sometimes you got a healer, or whatever you want to call that person, the person playing the instrument, or the person doing the chant, or the person shaking the rattles, or the person playing the drum, or whatever. And then you got the patient, who's the person who has the liver problem, or the whatever it is. You got this interaction of one person attempting to deliver healing to another person. You got the patient to oneself. You're by yourself. You're going to use sound to heal yourself. Or people have their own medicine song comes to them in a dream, or people go. And I've seen there's different harmonic singers that make all these crazy noises and move sound through their body. There's a zillion different ways to heal yourself with sound. We do it all the time without even thinking about it. Humming, whistling. And then nature patient is what I call this other category, which is really what I'm the fondest of. Sitting by the water. I mean, what can be more healing than listening to the sound of a beautiful stream, or listening to the sound of the birds, or the sound of the wind, or the crickets, or you can go on and on, the monkeys. Sound healing and resonance. We already talked about resonance. That if something has its own particular vibrational frequency that it naturally operates at, like one of those tuning forks, and say another one has the same vibrational frequency as that one should have, then if you can get somehow the energy in this vibrating machine or tuning fork to transfer into this tuning fork, then this one will start vibrating at its natural frequency. So say instead of a tuning fork, it's a person. So say a person has a harmonious, natural, very complex, much more complex than a tuning fork, but a set of resonant vibrations. Another person has the same thing, say, for instance, can pass that on. So that you can see a lot about teacher-student relationships, why it feels so good to do Qigong next to the master. A lot of stuff like that, but also in terms of sound healing. The greatest amount of energy is transferred from one system to another if they resonate at the same frequency. So if you tune yourself to resonate. Say that tuning fork, say you're able to tune its frequency, like this glass of water. If there were, like this glass without water, and the one with water. So I could tune the resonant frequency of the glass by changing how much water is in it, right? And say this one was a bigger glass and this one, or a smaller glass, this one wanted to tune itself to that one so they'd resonate together. It would take more or less water. It would make some adjustment. So what a sound healer often does is tune his or herself to that person. So you'll see a sound healer will put their hand on the person's heart, watch their heart, feel their pulse, watch their breath, listen to the way they talk, watch the way they move, tune in to that person's vibration. And then once the sound healer has tuned into that, then they can transfer energy between them easier. Just like the energy between the tuning forks transfers a lot more energy if they're tuned to the same frequency. Back to intention. Once the sound healer tunes into that person's frequency so that they become synchronized and resonant, then this sound healer has to do this strange thing called intending. And what exactly is going on there is, to me, very mysterious. Not mysterious in my own practice. Like when I intend to do something, I'm very familiar with what I mean by that. But to talk about it in these contexts, like trying to express it to scientists or to someone who doesn't believe or hasn't experienced anything relating to that, becomes more difficult to talk about what exactly intention really is. And I think that that's the greatest mystery to be grappled in attempting to bring these things into our technological world. So the sound healer this is one type of sound healing, and this is what I'm most familiar with. The sound healer, say there's a sick person, the sound healer tunes into that person. And I would, for instance, start breathing with the person. And the person probably has some unpleasant breathing pattern. And I'll watch it and try to breathe along with that person. You know, some way where they might only breathe into the left side, you know, or like some sort of breath pattern. Try to tune into that, and then feel that person's pulse or watch their heartbeat. And then on a more subtle level, just try to tune into their vibe more than those more gross things like their heart and their breath. But just tune into their vibe. Try to feel what it feels like to be them, to feel their illness, to feel their stomach, you know? Yeah. Yes. And that's why this next part is important. The sound healer then has to have a strong and focused intention on healing, because once you're tuned into that person, you need to have the capability of, once you're synchronized together, to go to the good place. Or another way of looking at it is to have the good place come through you. And if that good place could be thought of as the rhythms of nature, to me I think of it as tapping in, synchronizing myself to nature. So first synchronize myself to that person, and then synchronize myself to nature, to the feelings of the rhythms of nature. And that's where it becomes a little bit more mysterious to me. And in various cultures, that comes in the context of spirits and various things that aren't easily addressed in terms of sound. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm a massage therapist too. My experience is actually different. And I hear people talking about when the therapist getting sick. I realize what I do is I don't just try to synchronize with the client. I'm just staying in my rhythm and they become true to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you try to synchronize yourself with them, then you yourself have to be.
Yeah, I actually don't do it like this, but I find that this is some people do it like this, and this is a sort of an easier way to talk about it. And this is one way. There is an infinite variety of ways, but this is an easier way to see its relationship to rhythm. I do often synchronize with the person, but not in a way that I feel like I'm becoming like them, but in a way that, although I've had many experiences where that happened, but I typically think of myself as more like a medium through which the music starts to play that they need. Like their illness is pulling through me the sound that it needs. But I'm just trying to keep it in context of the physics of sound, and this makes it just a little easier to talk about. But thank you for pointing that out, because that's a really important part in healing, is to make sure your practices don't involve your taking on illness. I sort of, sometimes when I tell people about this, I talk about, what they're like, what do you do? People in sound therapy sessions wonder what exactly I'm doing. And to me, they'll have crazy experiences or wild, magical experiences. People see spirits come in the room, and they'll go on journeys, and they'll see auras and all this stuff. And for me, it's a lot more grounded and just straightforward, and nothing really like that is in my experience, even though it's super common, more common than not for people to experience things like that. But to become proficient in the instrument. So if you wanted to do sound healing, here's my advice. Pick an instrument that feels comfortable to you and just learn how to play it. Even if you don't learn how to play it well, like, the flute, the shakuhachi, get a shakuhachi master in here, and it'll be really clear that I'm not a shakuhachi master. But I can play it enough to sing a pretty song through it. And so pick an instrument and get to where you can play something on it that sounds nice. And to stay rooted in the rhythms of nature. Pay attention to nature, to the healing force of the universe. That's not you, that's not somebody you know, but that's the whole thing. Stay tapped into that. And for some people that's God, for some people Goddess, some people that's the Tao, some people that's the earth chi and the sky chi, or the yin and the yang and the balance, but tapped into the source. You can call it however you want. And then intend for healing to occur. So you learn how to play your instrument, you stay connected to the source, you make sure you're always touching that source and you don't ever let it go. And then intend for healing to happen, and then it just happens. And I don't ever plan what I'm doing. It's not according to any particular principles. Just everything I know, every talent I have, every experience I've ever had acts as a tool that the sound uses to make good things happen. And I think it's really similar for a lot of different healing works. I studied Reiki, and that's how it was for me with Reiki too. Essentially just being a conduit. Real quick, show you a harmonic analysis of the different instruments. So here's the waveform of that cheap tuning fork. You notice that it's got this main wave, but it's not just a sine wave. It's a couple sine waves on top of each other. In fact, it's a bunch of sine waves on top of each other. And here's a look at the different frequencies present in it. So the fundamental frequency here is, I guess that's about 280 hertz or whatever it's supposed to be. And then you got an octave up above it, and you got the next. So you see all these harmonics, these different frequencies mixed in their different proportions. And so when you're going to study the quality of a sound, that's what you typically will look at. You look at the arrangement of how much of each harmonic is present. And then that's just that's the waveform of the actual sound. So if the sound were coming out of a speaker, that's pretty much how the speaker would be moving. It'd be doing a pulse like this with a little extra on top of it, right? But it'd be doing like 288 times per second or whatever it is. This is the didgeridoo. Notice it has a really full powerhouse of the harmonics. See that instead of being scattered, scattered peaks, it's got this really solid looking packed. It's got and the peaks are pretty broad, so it doesn't have these really precise harmonics. Instead, they're a little bit broad, so it's got a lot of frequencies sort of spread out around these fundamental frequencies. And that's the waveform coming out of the didgeridoo when I'm just playing the straight note. And here is the flute, which interestingly is much closer to a pure sine wave than those cheap tuning forks, which are supposed to be the primary source of pure sine waves. And so you notice the flute has very pure sound. Like you can almost, like I get to where I can look at these graphs and start to feel it. Like you see, there's very few harmonics here, right? There's just mostly the first 4 harmonics, right? So compared to all those other ones that had all of those frequencies all mixed together, this has got just, and that gives some sense of the delicacy of the sound. Here is the gong. So the gong, where's that stick? And I'll play these all a little bit more in a minute for a better demonstration. But the gong, you got a lot of different sounds all mixed together. So this is a lot closer to white noise or to pink noise, which is just a mixture of all the frequencies. So it doesn't have any really striking peaks. Like it has this one, that sound, which was about, gosh, for some reason my screen screwed over so I can't see that. I don't know, it's about 90 hertz, 85 hertz or something. That, like if you want to try to sing the note of that gong, that'd be the note you'd sing. But other than that, it's just got this really, like all the frequencies mixed together, not just harmonics, but just harmonic on harmonic on harmonic on harmonic. And that's portrayed in this really complex looking waveform. If you notice, it doesn't repeat, right? You don't see like a repeating pattern. It's pretty crazy. And so that's the nature of white noise or chaotic. It's nature of white noise, pink noise, or also of chaotic systems. Things that are so complex, they have so much going on that you can't narrow it down to one simple thing. And so all these things have some relationship to how these instruments sound, how they affect you, how you perceive them. Just real quick, one thing I do is I sing the different vowels. This is something a teacher taught me a long time ago. I sing 7 different vowels. I sing ooh, oh, for the 7 chakras. Ooh, oh, oh, ah, eh, e. And you notice, even I was singing the same note every time. What I'm doing is I'm singing the same note, but I'm changing the shape of the resonant cavity of my body. And when you change the shape of a resonant cavity, what you do is you change which harmonics are present. And so you're providing the same note, though. Ooh, but then you're changing the shape of the cavity, changes the harmonics. So for instance, if you played that tuning fork in some box, right? And say it's some box that you can change the shape of, and you change the shape of that box, that's going to change the frequencies resonating in the box because of the shape, which is going to change it just like you have this vibrating vocal cord. and then you change the shape of the box it's in, which is your body, and that changes the vowel. So I just did a quick harmonic analysis of me singing these vowel sounds. So there's ooh. And you can just watch how that's the waveform of singing ooh. And these are all me singing them at the same note. So I'm singing ooh, right? That's ooh. And that's oh. See how the waveform is much different. It's got just a different mixture of harmonics for oh. Ah, oh. Has a different shaped waveform with a different mixture of harmonics. Ah, that's ah. That's eh. Really complicated. It's got all the harmonics in pretty similar proportions. Eh. Throat chakra. Eh. Pretty similar. It starts to get more complicated, right? And the reason it has all these like little tiny squiggles, those are these high frequencies. The big fat bumps, those are the low frequencies. And it's a mixture of a bunch of frequencies, right? And then that's E, the crown chakra sound. And so there's a lot more you can do spending time studying these things. And I'd like to spend a little time with the instruments. I'd like anybody involved in any kind of healing research to really remember intention and how important it is that I can take this flute and play it with the intention to heal. And what happens when I do that is so much different than if someone plays this instrument with a different intention. And that intention doesn't come out in these harmonic analyses, at least that I have known. That intention is something when people talk about sound healing research, they'll tell you that people will say that this frequency is for your heart, this frequency is for your lungs, this frequency is for this frequency is for that. To me, that in sound healing for thousands of years, that's never been how sound healing worked. Sound healing worked through a person with a heart focused on love and healing, doing something, connecting to somebody through sound. If they're using sound, they're connecting to someone with the sound. And it's not necessarily that important what the sound is. That to claim that you're going to heal your liver with some particular frequency, to me, is absurd. And it's a violation of all the traditions of healing. The shaman, when he healed somebody, he never applies this one frequency for one thing. He sings a medicine, or she sings a medicine song that came in a dream that landed on her back from an eagle. And she's, that's not singing some particular frequency. So I want to say something about this because it's really important. There's a lot of sound healing research going on out there, and people are attempting to bring sound healing into the eye of science and make it reputable in science. And in the attempts to do that, they're ending up pulling sound healing back into the same paradigm that is problematic in medicine, which is this idea that you have this sickness, so you apply this particular medicine. So they say, your heart is bad, I'm going to apply this frequency. That's the same thing as saying, I give you this thing. That's not how real healing works. At least in my experience, real healing comes from the source, from the connection between two people, or between someone in nature and someone in God, or in the universe, the Tao. I just want to say something. I just want to keep bringing it back to that because I think that's really important. And most sound healing books and research that you'll see leaves that out and tries to sound scientific when in fact it's not necessarily the case. So be careful when you believe something that sounds scientific. Anyway, I believe that developing a clear understanding of the nature and role of intention is the primary key to bringing alternative, as people call them, or I call them traditional healing methods, natural healing methods, into the modern technological world. And I'd like to thank you in blessings.
I can't remember the numbers, but I've read that maybe in the last 100 years or maybe 500 years, the tuning has shifted, and people say maybe it's like for the scale, 12-tone scale, it's maybe 40 megahertz less. I can't remember the number.
Yeah, it's shifted a bunch of times, and they had these international meetings where they just decide.
Yeah, and they say it's not. It used to be more based on the body sense, back where your organ sense was the tones are more correlated with the body. So if you tune with a modern tuning fork, you're actually tuning against the natural tuning of the body. Do you know much about that?
A little bit. I know about. There's a problem if you use geometry to define your tuning system, which is the natural way that Pythagoras used. He's the most famous guy for really systematizing our knowledge of the relationship of vibrations to different notes. That if you do that, if you go by the geometry, as you travel up octaves, the scale changes. So this, on a piano, it's called equal tempered scale. The piano, every set of keys in every octave works together in the same way. Whereas if you use a more natural tuning, as you move up the piano, they stop being octaves of each other and they stop working together in the same way. So back in a long time ago, when you play in F, the scale would be much different than if you played in C. But now playing in F is just pretty much like playing in C, shifted down. All the keys work the same. But I could talk to you more about that. I could actually recommend there's a lot of different sources to read about that that can go into it in much more depth. It's a kind of tricky topic.
Yeah, I guess it's the book on the healing with didgeridoo of correlation.
Yeah, it's been in his meetings of great and mighty European men in ties who decided it. Just like the people who decided what time it is.
And how big they are.
Go ahead, yeah.
If true healing is really more intent, what motivates you for all this analysis that you're doing?
Well, for one, it's fun. For two, I have a dream that science and love have common ground. And to me, the fulfillment of that dream, and there's many people around the world with that same dream, and a lot of those people are here with us, and that through continuing to study sound and in the context of science, and through continuing to study sound in the context of healing, that ground is started, the connections will appear spontaneously. And maybe there's some connections that can't be made. I'm not convinced that science and intention are even in the same realms of the universe. I'm not sure one way or the other. I'm not convinced that intention has physical form. I'm not convinced that everything can be addressed scientifically, or that it even should. But I would like it to be, because I think that if you could, our whole technological system, our industrial world is ruled by the findings and knowledge of science and driving. So if you can, in that big machine of science, find love and peace and joy and truth, then that big machine will suddenly turn into dancing Buddha. This is my hope, my dream. That's why. Anything else?
So, is there anything else that you can recommend on how to get more into sound healing besides just sitting down and playing your favorite instrument and just tuning in nature and developing good relationships?
I would study other healing arts because I think they all work the same, and spend time with healers. Like really, I was just thinking about it today. I was thinking about one of my teachers and how it's such a short time. He taught me so much, and how almost every cool thing I do, I was like a gift he gave me that I reluctantly took with bruises, but not real bruises, but that it's difficult sometimes to take real advice, and just to spend time with as many healers as possible and see what they do, because I think it's all about feeling out your own way, as far as I'm concerned. I learned a lot from Reiki. I don't really do Reiki anymore. I did it a lot, but a lot of how I approach playing dig on people is exactly the same as how I did Reiki. My hand just naturally moves to somewhere, and I just trust that that's where it's supposed to go. And usually when it goes there, it's like, and wow, that must have been the right place. And then it naturally goes somewhere else. And the same with a didgeridoo. I move it, and then it goes to some place and might start going like that. And really, when you're practicing Qigong, the idea of like letting yourself, move spontaneously, like Qi dancing, applying that to what you're doing, to what instrument you're choosing to play, what rhythm you're choosing to play, what note you're choosing to sing, to let it keep in the focus on intention.